But I want to go into spots. Spots are particularly easy to webify because you don't have quite that time for the scene setting. You just kind of get straight to the facts. Um, and and there are lots of spots in a newscast, so there's a lot of material to work with. Um, so I came up with this list. It's kind of a quick and dirty list for converting your spot scripts into online content. So you can go through this list and make that conversion, but just be sure to check your work. Okay, so let's start with, and I call this the QABCDs of converting your script. I hope it's easy to remember. So the Q is putting quotation marks around transcribed acts. You saw the transcript. It's the material's already there. Putting quotation marks around those acts. Boom! You have your quote. You have your quote for your online story. Simple conversion. Just keep in mind, quotation marks are very powerful tools, especially if you are also posting your audio. You are probably going to have that very dedicated listener reader reading your story and listening to the story and wondering why the words don't match, wondering why it's not matching verbatim because, hey, it's a quote. So just be mindful of that. If it gets a little complicated in that area, don't use quotation marks. Summarize. You can even write that someone said something and just don't use quotation marks. But again, if you do, make sure it matches verbatim. And then A, attribution generally follows the quote. It comes after the quote. That's not always the case, but I know in radio there's a lot of introduction to the act, to the speaker. So like so and so is a representative for the USDA, and then you hear that person speak. Generally the attribution comes after the quote. And says versus said, we had a question about this earlier. It's fine to use either, just be consistent. So if you are talking about a feature, if this is a feature, sure, says is great. You want to keep it in the present. But if you're talking about a city council meeting that happened yesterday, use said. It happened in the past tense, so use said. Either is fine, just be consistent. Don't time travel. Okay, so the B of the QABCDs, breaking up long paragraphs, sentences, and quotes. I'm sure you've seen large blocks of text where your eyes just glaze over. And it doesn't even have to be, a huge block, but maybe it's 5 sentences and it's just too wordy. Certainly, if you're transcribing acts, the way people talk are not, it's not quite as, if you were to transcribe every spoken word, would not look as good as, if you were able to write those words, if you were able to edit down those words. And so just be mindful of breaking up long paragraph sentences and quotes. And I'll show you some examples of this in just a moment. So C, converting numbers into digits. With a radio script, you have the words written out like $1 million in 3 words, but words can get lost as people are reading, and as you know from the reading you do, the numbers, digits jump out. If you had a $sign, the number 1, and million in front of it, that would get my attention a lot more quickly as a reader than having $1 million written out. And so we talk about details, include the details like numbers and helpful links. So just keep that in mind. People like to have links to follow, especially if you're referencing something like a report, a government report that might be difficult to find. Not just home pages, but things that are within the site, within an organization's site or an article that will be helpful to the reader. If it's hard for me to find, I'll appreciate that you provided the link. Use bolded subheads to help your audience. So I'll show you an example of this. You've seen this in articles where you see subheads. they are helpful in directing the user to the information they're looking for. It's great for scannability, and they also signal change in the topic. This is especially helpful in news roundups early in the morning.